be able to get a full credit for this assignment. Then we're going to work on the back side of your pink sheet. So that's going to be your homework assignment or your classroom assignment that you finish for homework today if we don't finish it in class today. Is everybody clear on what we're doing? All right, so number 1, 37 raised to the 0 power. What is any number raised to the 0 power? 1. So let's go ahead and write 1 there. Number 2 is 3 to the negative 4th power. What did we say a negative exponent tells us about an expression? It's going to be a what? It's going to be a fraction, right? It's going to be a fraction. So if this has got a negative exponent, we're going to be moving it around. Probably it's going to be a fraction. So here, we're going to turn it into a fraction, and then we're going to flip it and make that exponent positive. So remember, to simplify an expression, you can't have any negative exponents left in it. You can't have any exponents of 0 left in it. So now we need to simplify that exponent, or that power, 3 to the 4th power. You guys remember how to do that with a calculator?
Yes.
It's going to be 3. Then hit the Y to the X button. Do you need something to write with, Jeremiah?
81.
Okay, so now we know that 3 to the negative 4th power is 1 over 81, 1/81st. Now I'm not sure we did an example of this one of these, but anytime there's a negative exponent, if it's in the top, like it was here, we move it to the bottom. But if it's in the bottom, then we can move it to the top. And we want to get rid of our negative exponents, always do that first. So here we're going to rewrite that as 5. Now this is getting moved to the top, and we're changing that exponent to a positive 2. So when you move it to the top, it's always being multiplied. So now on our calculator, we can do 5. Press the times button, 5, Y to the X button, 2 equals. I think that should work.
125.
125. Any questions on that? So remember, all you have to do right now to get credit for this assignment, we are literally going to work them all together, scan them, submit them by about 120, maybe 125 at the latest. All right, number 4. It's got a negative exponent on the bottom. What is the exponent on the 3 if we don't see it? Does anybody remember that from yesterday? 1. If you don't see that exponent, it's a 1. So it's a positive 1, so we don't need to move that one anywhere. If something has a positive exponent, we don't move it. We leave it wherever it is. If it's in the top, we leave it in the top. If it's in the bottom, we'll leave it in the bottom. Okay? So the 3 stays where it is, but the 6 has a negative exponent of 1. So we're going to rewrite that as 3 times 6 to the 1st power. Well, 6 to the 1st power is just 6, right? So what is 3 times 6 to the 1st power? It's just 3 times 6. Anybody know what 3 times 6 is? 18. That's right. Number 5, number 7, number 9. These are tricky. These are tricky. Because we're not, and we're going to do that thing last. The best way to think about, if you have a negative sign outside parentheses with no number, the best way to think of that is, this is going to be the opposite of 5 raised to the negative 2 power. So we're going to go ahead and say this equals the opposite of, now we're going to flip this, right? This is going to be over 1. So now it's going to be the opposite, we've got to put our parentheses back, opposite of 1 over 5 squared. And so that is the opposite of 1/25. Does that make sense to everyone? What is the opposite of positive 1/25? What's the opposite of positive 25? Right, so the opposite of positive 1/25 is negative 1/25, so we really just have to remove those parentheses. Anybody want to tell me how to do number 6? Can you tell me how to do number 6? Tosh, can you tell me how to do number 6? Well, we said if it's got a negative exponent, what's it probably going to be? If it's in a fraction, right?
Put a 1 over it.
Put a 1 under it, yep. And now what?
Flip it.
Right, and that'd be 1/12 to the positive first power, which is really just 1 divided by 112, or 1/112. So these are your final answers. Let's make sure we're clear. Now, -3 raised to the 0 power. So this should be -3 raised to the 0 power, I think. I'm going to look at the answer key. Sometimes these resources they do them differently. It should be a -1. I'm curious what the answer key says. Should be the opposite of 11 raised to the 0 power, but let's see what it says. Yeah, so this is a trick one. It's kind of tricky because there's not a parentheses or anything out there, right? In order for that to be negative, so let's go ahead and do this one. This is the opposite. So we're going to say that's the opposite of 11 raised to the 0 power. What is 11 raised to the 0 power? 1. So it's the opposite of 1. What's the opposite of positive 1? -1. But let's put an example of what we thought the answer was going to be. Now, if they did it like this, what is our answer going to be? Positive 1, right? If -11 is raised to the 0 power, then that equals 1. If it's the opposite, or negative 11 to the 0 power, do you guys see the difference there? You have to have those grouping symbols to raise that negative to the 0 power. Anybody want to try number 8? What do you think? Jacob, you want to try number 8? It's a trick one. I'll get you started. It's going to be the opposite. And we're going to do something to make that positive, that -2 positive. What are we going to do? Say it again. Not on the top, right? I'm going to put this one over 1. This is a negative. What are we going to do? When this was a negative, we flipped that fraction, right, Jacob? So here we're going to flip the fraction. Actually, we're going to flip the fraction. And so this is going to be, 1 over 7n to the 2nd power. Does that make sense, Jacob? So it was a negative. We have to flip it. But we have to make sure the 7 and the n are getting raised to the 2nd power. So that's going to be the opposite of 1 over 7 squared times n squared. If that exponent is on the outside of the parentheses, Jalen, if that exponent is on the outside of the parentheses, we have to make sure the 7 is raised to the 2nd power and the n is raised to the 2nd power. So now it's going to be -1 over 49 times n to the 2nd power. Does that make sense, Anaya? Does that make sense, Sam?
So 49?
Yes. 7 squared, 7 times 7 is 49, and we have to leave the variable there because we don't know. It's the most simplified form we could get it in. So now our simplified answer, no negative exponents and no 0 exponents. everything that we could multiply got multiplied. That's basically what you do. You're looking to get rid of all zero exponents, get rid of all negative exponents, and anything that you can multiply, you got to go ahead and multiply. Any exponents that you can evaluate, you should go ahead and evaluate using your calculator if you need to. All right, what do you think, Aiden? Number 9. Can you give it a whirl? The negatives on the outside of the parentheses.
That would be, wouldn't it be like 1,
It'd be the opposite of 1, that's right. So what's the opposite of positive 1? Yes, because 15p is in the parentheses. 0 is on the outside of the parentheses to the right and up top. That exponent, that means everything inside there gets raised to the 0 power. So that makes that the opposite of 1. The opposite of positive 1 is negative 1. So that's our final answer.
If the negative sign was in a parentheses, it'd be positive 1, right?
Exactly. Did you hear what he said? Let's do that example. Let's do it this way. So negative p to the 0 power would actually be positive 1. It's a good point. Tavion, you writing everything I'm writing? Did you write this part? Negative 15p to the 0 power is 1? All right. So if we have a fraction, it's already a fraction, and it's got a negative exponent on the outside. Not sure if we talked about one of these. Exactly. So what we can do to make that exponent a negative, we're going to flip that fraction and make that exponent a positive. We have to know, now we want to evaluate the exponent. So this has to be 5 squared over 3 squared, even though the 2 is to the top, but it's got to be, that 2 has got to be distributed to the top of the fraction and the bottom of the fraction. Does that make sense, Tyrese?
A little bit.
Does that make sense, Caleb Berry? Does that make sense, Faith? So now what is 5 squared? Or 5 to the second power? 25. What is 3 to the second power? 9. And that will be our final answer. Right, so number 11, we got to kind of do in chunks. We have a negative exponent and we have a 0 exponent. So let's look, what is being raised to the 0 power in number 11? Y, only y's, right? So I'm going to go ahead and scratch that out and then replace that with a 1, because y to the 0 power is 1. Remember, all these are factors. This is 4 times x to the negative 3rd power times 1. That's what that says. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, so now, if I want to, I'm now going to get rid of that negative exponent. So what should I do? If it's a negative exponent, then basically it's in the top of a fraction, because there is not one, right? If the negative is in the top, we push it to the bottom. That's right. So now the 4 has a positive exponent. It stays where it is, right? 1, we don't need to put the times 1 because 4 times 1 is 4. But we have to push that negative exponent to the bottom and make it positive. What do you think? Does that make sense? Is that my door, or is that just somebody tapping? Thank you. Do you pass? Where are you coming from? Okay, so I have to write you up for skipping. Did someone tell you you could go to the bathroom? No. Okay. If you come this late to class, that's the same as skipping. Are you feeling bad? Do you need to go to the clinic? All right. Number 12. Negatives and negatives. What's the exponent on 8 here? 1. It's not negative 2, right? What's the exponent on 4? 1, right? So the 8 and the 4 are going to stay in the same spot. So I'm going to leave them there. Positive exponents we push it to the bottom. Now, if there's a negative exponent in the bottom, what do? Tony, you can't have that out right now. Tony. Now, is this problem done? Can we simplify anything else? What's 8 divided by 4? So we can still simplify those, right? Just like if that were just 8/4. So we're going to simplify that. 4 comes out of that twice. 4 comes out of that once. So now the simplified answer is 2n divided by 1 times m squared, which is just m squared. And that's your final answer. Any questions? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you, Aiden. Does that make sense, Ronnie? Does that make sense, Kayla Davis? Okay. So 13 gets a little bit more involved, right? So the thing we're looking at, I'm going to go ahead and give myself a fraction because I have some positive exponents and some negative exponents. Right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move everything with a negative exponent. If it's in the top, I'm moving it to the bottom. If it's in the bottom, I'm moving it to the top. So the negative 6, remember, has a positive 1 exponent. So that one's going to stay in the top. Where's the a to the negative second power going to go? It's in the top. Where's it going to go? Bottom. So a to the negative second power is going to be a to the positive second power. Now, we're going to leave this here for now, BC, because that's positive, right? Now, d to the negative 4th power is in the bottom. Where's it going to go so we can make it a positive exponent? We're pushing it to the top. Very good. So this is going to be d to the positive 4th. And we have one last thing. We can't leave these parentheses with an exponent on the outside of it like that because I can distribute that in there. So we're going to be negative 6. This would be the same as b squared times c squared. Does everybody see that? So that square on the outside, that's the power of 2. That's b to the power of 2 and c to the power of 2. It tells us that that 2 goes to everything inside the parentheses. Does that make sense, Jeremiah? And so now we have negative 6, b squared, c squared, d to the 4th, all over a to the 2nd. We don't have anything we can simplify with that negative 6. We don't have anything else that we can multiply anymore. That is our final answer. So while this is a little bit confusing, and we rushed through it yesterday, hopefully you're noticing this is all brand new. You don't have to be able to solve an equation to do this right now, right? So this is something like an independent unit. We will be solving some equations later on in the unit, but the majority of it is just you learning how to work with these positive and negative exponents. So if you've been struggling, you can get a fresh start with this new unit. All right. What do you think about number 14? What do you think we're going to do to number 14 to make that negative a positive? Faith, can you tell me what you think we should do? We could distribute, but let's make it a positive first. Let's look up here to this one. Do you see it, number 10? What do we do to make that exponent positive? So this fraction was 3/5 raised to the negative second power, and we rewrote it as 5/3 to the second power. So very good, we're flipping. So the bottom will go on the top, and the top will go on the bottom. The numerator will be in the denominator, and vice versa. Now we have to know that this is 6 to the second power times t to the second power over, actually, if you haven't written it, don't write yet. Let's do it this way. Let's do it in a more basic step. So this is 6 36, I'm gonna keep the t squared. 5 times 5 is 25, and to keep the s squared. So that is our final answer. Does that make sense, Kimani? Does that make sense, Aiden? Make sense, Sam? Let's go down to 15. I'm gonna work mine over here because I kinda 13 ran down. So the first thing I want to do, I don't have any parentheses, so I'm going to start moving my negative exponents around so they're positive. So this is not a fraction, so I can't just flip it. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself a fraction here. And 4 to the negative second power. Should that stay in the top or should that go to the bottom? Yep, the negatives have to go. So technically that's in the top, right? Because that would be over 1. So this is going to have to go to the bottom. And now we can make that to a positive. How about h to the negative 4? Is that going to stay in the top or go to the bottom? Sam? H to the negative 4th. Is it going to stay in the top or go to the bottom? Bottom. And when we do that, we make that for a positive. J to the 3rd power. Is that going to stay in the top or go to the bottom? What do you think, Jeremiah? J to the 3rd power, does it stay where it is or do we move it to the bottom?
Stay where it is.
It does, very good. Do you remember why it stays where it is? Because it's a positive exponent, not a negative. The positive exponents don't get moved. So this is J to the 3rd power. So now I'm going to simplify 4 squared, so my final answer is going to be J to the 3rd power divided by 4 times 4. 4 squared is 16. H to the 4th power. That's number 15. Any questions? Alrighty. Number 16. What should we do first? What should we do first, Sam? Okay. Okay. Now what? What do you think would be a good idea to do next? What do you think would be a good idea to do next, Tavion? If I were you guys, anytime there's a 0 power, let's get rid of that. What's x to the 0 power?
1.
Right, anything to 0 power is 1, so let's go ahead and replace that with a 1. Alright, so this is going to be, reverse out this fraction. This is the opposite of negative 6yz all raised to the negative 2nd power. So I'm actually going to stick this negative out here. So that is one thing we can do with that negative. We can move it if we've got a fraction. Let's stick it out here. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Now, how am I going to get this exponent to be a positive? Jacob, how does this get to be turned to a positive? Sorry? It's going to go to the bottom, right? So this, everything that's being raised to the negative 2nd power is this right here, 6yz. So we're going to push all of that to the bottom. And we have 1 there. So negative 1 over 6yz squared. Are we done?
No.
No, because we've got to distribute that 2 through everything, right? So it's negative 1 over 6 squared, y squared, z squared. Are we done now? Are we done now? No, what are we going to do? What do you think, Jalen? What's left to do? Can we simplify 6 squared, Jalen? What is 6 squared? Can you subtract it? Sorry, say again? I think I heard you. I think you're right. Did you say?
36.
Yeah, 36. we'll be done with this. This will be your free 100 points as long as you've written everything that I've written. If you've not written everything I've written, you won't get credit. I'll leave it up here if you need to fill in at the end, but your instructions were to follow on with me. All right, what do you think? Armani, when you look here, what would you do first here? What would you do first? Armani? Number 17. Say it again? Well, I don't know exactly what switching is. We are going to move some things around, but it's probably not what I would do first. Aiden?
Cross out the HO and then put a 1.
H to the 0 power, yeah. This H to the 0 power, just like we did here, Armani. We did that first, right? Let's do this first here. Anything with 0 power, let's get rid of it first. Now we're going to get ready to switch them, Armani. Okay, now we're going to switch them. So what's the exponent on 10? Very good, Armani. So we're going to move that. Nope, it stays where it is. What's the exponent on S? Positive or negative 1? Positive. So does it get moved?
No.
Stays where it is. What's the exponent on G?
Negative 5.
Negative 5. So what do we do with that?
Switch.
Move it to the bottom and make the exponent positive. And now we have 1 here, but 10 times F times 1, we don't really need to do anything with that. All right, H to the negative 2nd power is in the bottom. What do we do to make that exponent a positive, Sam? Yes, good job, Taj. Good job, Sam. Move it to the top and make it positive. So if I had a number down here that I could simplify with that 5, don't be tempted to cancel those. Those aren't can't cancel those. That's an exponent, not a coefficient out here. We can simplify coefficients, but we can't simplify one coefficient and one exponent. Okay? Alrighty. You guys try number 18. There's not anything to zero out. So go ahead and give yourself a fraction.
So that's our answer for number 17.
Oh, sorry, yes, that's our answer. Thank you. So let's start with the fraction bar. Go through. Anything with a positive exponent stays where it is. Anything with a negative exponent gets moved. If the negative exponent is in the top, it gets moved to the bottom. If the negative exponent is in the bottom, it gets moved to the top. Now you just have to evaluate that. Remember what to do with that? Super free using the outside of parentheses. So how do we get rid of those parentheses? So far, so good though. Sweetheart. You're supposed to be working. Number 18. You're going to the right worksheet out. We've been working for 30 minutes and you don't even have the right worksheet out. That's not good. We've literally worked 17 problems together. So that's so far so good. What do you do with this? And then what do you do with that? Yep. So move that one to the top.
And this.
Yep. That's exactly right, bud. What's that? So the 11 stays in the bottom. don't see it, what is it? So 1. Right, so that's got a positive exponent, so that stays in the top, so put it in the top. The t has a negative exponent. Is it going to stay where it is, or we're going to move it? Where are we going to move it to? Move it to the bottom. Move it to the bottom. Not negative 1. It's t to the first power, right? When we move it, it makes that exponent positive. If you don't have the t, it's going to be t to the first power. Erase that. Let's see yours. Good. Good. Let's see the bottom of that. Is your T on the bottom, Jacob? T says you're on the bottom. Ooh, you're right. T. So your T on the bottom? You good? Technically the T would go first, but it's fine. Alright, so the 6 has an exponent of 1, it stays where it is. T to the negative first power is going to go to the bottom, it'll be T to the first power. 11 has a positive exponent, it stays where it is. UV has a negative exponent, we're going to put it at the top and make that exponent a positive. W to the 4th has a positive exponent, it stays where it is. We can't leave these parentheses in it, so this gets distributed. This 3's got to go to the U and the V. So it's 6 U cubed, or V to the 3rd power. You can read that as cubed or to the 3rd power, all over 11 times T times W to the 4th power. Any questions? Hush? Technically, I would not count off if you put the W to the 4th before the T. The coefficient should always go first, so that number. And we do typically put them in alphabetical order. So while it's not wrong if you put the W to the 4th times T first, you will never see that in a normal book or anything, right? So we want to put them in that order. I do want to go over you're going to do the back of your pink sheet for homework, so I do want to do some of those with you. So I said we would scan and submit these, and we can in just a minute, but I want to do some of these problems with you first. So let's go ahead and flip your pink sheet over, because the back side of your pink sheet is your homework tonight. The back side of your pink sheet is your homework tonight. So I want to do some of those with you. If you don't have your pink sheet from yesterday, you can get up and get another pink sheet, but everyone should have your pink sheet out. I feel like I'm on the Jeopardy game for Final Jeopardy waiting while this document opens. Okay. All right, so we are going to go through. You need to know you guys tell me, do you remember what it means to evaluate? What does it mean to evaluate an expression? What does it mean to evaluate an expression? What do you think, Faith? Any idea? Oh, it does mean to replace it. That means they say here, evaluate each expression for A equals -4, B equals 3, and C equals 2. So that just means we're plugging in this value everywhere there's an A. We're plugging in this value everywhere there's a B. And I can't remember which ones I told you to do. oh, you're going to do them all. So we're just going to do some of them together. So you have to do all the problems. So the more we do together, and we only have a few minutes, 9 minutes, but the more we do together, the less you have to do on your own. So let's get started. So for number 1, we have to know that this is 3 times a to the negative first power. Does that make sense to everyone? That's what that means, right? We should know that by now. So now we're going to take everywhere there's an a, we're plugging in negative 4. So this is going to be 3 times negative 4 to the negative first power. Remember, that negative first power doesn't mean we're changing the sign. We're not multiplying that, right? That means we've got to turn it into a fraction. So we're going to put this one over 1, and it's 3 times negative 1 over 4, and that would be to the first power. So now we have to remember how to multiply fractions. Top times top. And we can use our calculator. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, because I know sometimes you guys aren't great with your positives and negatives. Jeremiah, come put it on my desk. Cannot be texting in class. If you don't put it on my desk, you have lunch attention tomorrow. So those are your choices. All right. Does everybody understand what we're doing here? Let's do one that's a little bit harder. Let's do number 23 together. That's 4 times a squared times b to the negative second power times c to the third power. Another way you could do this is we could move the negatives first if we want to, that negative exponent. Thank you. If we want to move that negative exponent, we could rewrite this as 4 times a squared times c cubed all over b squared. And then we don't have to flip it once there's a number in it. So there's 2 different strategies you can use. So now we're going to plug in a is negative 4. So that's 4 times negative 4 squared times c to the third power. Well, c is 2. So that's 2 to the third power divided by b. Well, b is 3. So that's 3 squared. So we could literally do this on our calculator straight across. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So on your calculator, 4, the times button, parentheses, 4, the negative button, the y to the x button. Oh, no, I lied. Since it's an exponent of 2, it's easier. We can do the x to the second button. So remember, these are all buttons. The 4 button, the negative button, the x squared button, times, parentheses, 2, the y to the x button, 3, close your parentheses, then hit equals. What operation is the fraction bar? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide. What operation is the fraction bar? Division. Thank you, Zanaya. So now it's divide, parentheses, 3, and then the x squared button.
Teachers and students, please pardon this interruption for a brief announcement. Students, if you have 7th period with Mr. McGriff, Coach McGriff, in the old gym, you are to report to the cafeteria for 7th period. The old gym will be closed. So if you have 7th period with Coach McGriff, please report to the cafeteria when the bell rings. Thank you.
And that would be, so you could do it like that, or you could simplify each expression. So 4, negative 4 squared is positive 16, 2 cubed is 8. So either one of those, you should get the same answer. So let's do one like 27 or 28. Let's do number 27. So number 27 says that we need to write it as a power of 10. That means this number in the bottom is going to have an exponent. It's going to have a base of 10. So we're going to rewrite this as 1 over 10 to some power. Does anybody know how many times you multiply 10 by to get 1,000? Aiden says 3, and Aiden is right. If you don't know, just do it in your calculator. 10 times 10 and hit equals. We'll see that's 100. Times 10 again, you'll see that's 1,000. So now we know it's 10 to the third power. So that's your answer. 1 over 10 to the third power. Does that make sense, Sam? Does that make sense? That's your final answer. For number 29, let's just cheat. What do you say? Not cheat. We're not going to cheat. We're going to use our resources. In your calculator, press 10, y to the x, 3, and then the negative button. Hit equals. What do you get?
0.001.
That's it. That's literally all you have to do. You have to be able to put it in the calculator. Number 31 is an evaluate. So all you're going to do is you're plugging in -3 here. I'm not going to do that one for you. Make sense to everyone? Okay, I'm going to get out of this so I can scroll. I'll go back. Give me a second. All right, so this one's an evaluate. This one is an inequality. So I'm going to tell you that it needs to be, I'm going to give you the format of what your answer should look like. It should be D is greater than some number and D is less than some number. So you got to tell me what goes in those blanks. So you're going to, hint, you're going to be evaluating this expression on your calculator, and then make sure you're reading the problem. I want you to try to figure it out for yourself. I don't want to do that one for you. And for number 33, it says for you to choose a fraction. I'm going to tell you to use 1/3. So you're going to use 1/3. It says to choose, but I'm asking you to use the 1/3. And now all you're doing here is evaluating. So make yourself a note. It's another evaluate problem. You're going to take 1/3 and plug it in for C here, for C here, and for C here. Okay? So you have to do all the problems that we didn't do together today to get full credit for your homework. Well, to get any credit, because there's no incomplete homework, right? I'll email it back to him right now. Jeremiah, thank you for making a good decision on that. But the next time it'll be lunch attention whether you give it to me or not, because you should not be texting during class, right? Good job, though. Appreciate that. It's less paperwork for me. Are you feeling better about the step today? No? Every time I asked you if you understand, you said yes. Oh, I'll post that. You're right. I need to post that. That was a kind of a last minute decision.